Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Game Pass Grab Bag, your weekly podcast reviewing games from the Game Pass collection, bringing you 3 new perspectives of varying skill range. I am the general of this army, Andrew. With me are cannon fodder, Keith.
Hello.
And coming out of the reserves, our next special guest, my brother, Aaron.
Hello, hello.
And we had a listener pick recommend that we do Battlefields. And he said, just pick any of them. And I figured, what better person to pick than my brother, because between the three of us, we have played all of them?
Yeah, I think so.
So
I can't think of one I haven't played. So, yeah.
So I figured it was too much work for
all of them,
Liz to catch.
But I've played these ones.
Yeah, you've played most of them, at least the most recent ones. And I figured it'd be too much work for Liz to try to catch up. And this way we can actually talk about all of them in a kind of a broader sense. So mostly we will be talking about Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5. Except technically, I think it's still considered Battlefield V, which I guess...
No, I'm sorry. I will not accept that that's actually what it's called. It's Battlefield 5. A Roman numeral is a V, and it came after Battlefield 4.
No, it came after Battlefield 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we probably need to explain the timeline of these games because they are a little jacked up.
So this is why I think it's Battlefield V. One of the developers literally tweeted when they first announced it saying, no, it's Battlefield V for victory.
That sounds like he's trolling.
Yeah.
That sounds like a massive troll.
Either way.
I'm going to go with Aaron on that one.
So yes, the timing of these games is all over the place. There's Battlefield 3, then they did Battlefield 4, then they did Battlefield Bad Company. No, they did Battlefield 3,
Hardline.
Battlefield Company, and then they did Hardline. I don't know. They're all over the place. They can't figure out their naming system. Either way, because, the next one's now 2048.
2042.
2042.
And then
Close enough.
What was the one that you played that was a Battlefield in the future?
2148.
So, which this is not a sequel to that one. Yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
I mean, it's kind of like Call of Duty, but instead of just doing a new name every year, they're like just throwing numbers onto the end of it. Like, yeah, whatever feels right at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's not really confusing too many people. I don't think I've ever heard anyone be like, oh, I need Battlefield 2148 is the old one. I don't know. I've never heard anyone get confused with the titles.
No, but I think if you were new, if you were brand new to this and you logged on to Game Pass right now and you saw all the Battlefield games, it might be confusing if you've never played them before.
That is true.
Yeah, you don't know which one's in which order.
Other than the fact that the other ones have a 360 label on them, that might be a dead giveaway that a 361 might be older. But if you were to look at Battlefield 1, which takes place during World War I,
That makes sense, yeah.
it's technically earlier, but it's right now it's the second newest game.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you are new to this, we will mostly be talking about Battlefield 5, which is the newest one, and Battlefield 1, which is the previous one, which is still very active. Honestly, Battlefield 4 is also very, very active. I saw that.
It just recently did, because the new game will be close to Modern Warfare, so if you want to play the most up-to-date Modern Warfare battle game, Battlefield 4 is the one.
All right.
Okay.
And so since this is a little bit different, since we're kind of talking about multiple Battlefields here, we'll just go around and say which one you prefer between 1 and 5. So I guess I will start. For me, they're both definitely a game, especially when it comes to the single player. They're a lot of fun. They're really cool. But for me, as far as multiplayer goes, I think I would prefer Battlefield 5.
You're not going to say why? Just leave it at that.
I mean, we'll get more into it. For me, Battlefield 5, because there's a lot I have issues with between the two. But Battlefield 5, I do like some of the things they implement in it. But I will say I think the gunplay is probably better in 1, but I like 5. 5 is probably my favorite.
So as far as the single player, I didn't go through all of the war stories on Battlefield 5, but I did on Battlefield 1, and all of them were pretty much awesome. And even the ones I got through on Battlefield 5 were awesome. But I think I'm going to lean into, just from the way they played out, I think I like the ones in Battlefield 5 better. It just had a better system for ammo, and I liked it more. And I think for the multiplayer, I think Battlefield 5 as well. Mostly because I think in a lot of ways they feel the same to me. But the guns are newer, so they're a little more exciting, and you can build stuff, so I like building stuff.
I'm going to go opposite of you guys. As far as it goes for the single player, I think they're both pretty much the same.
Yeah.
We'll talk, I'm sure, a little bit about the single player, because it sounds like Keith probably spent more time enjoying that than I would. I mean, Battlefield is multiplayer to me. The new one is only going to be multiplayer, which is great. I think invest all that time in there. But for me, Battlefield 1 is better for some really slight reasons. But again, we can talk about that later.
So we're going to start by actually talking about the single player, by getting into the gameplay. So in the single player, I highly recommend both these games. If you're kind of someone who's not into too many first-person shooters, it probably won't change your mind too much. But the way the single players go, a lot of games like this, like a lot of people associate Battlefield very similar to Call of Duty, and they generally ignore the single player. I highly recommend you do not ignore these single players because they're designed differently. They're just little episodic vignettes. So they're these different stories throughout the battle that do different mechanics, different characters. They're not really tied into each other, and they nailed it. I loved the single player. I think overall, like after like we talked a little bit about it before, I think I preferred the single player mostly in Battlefield 1, but in Battlefield 5 had my favorite one, and that was The Last Tiger, where you actually played as the German army. You were a German tank trying to like defend a city that was falling, and the story in that one's so good. But what did you guys think of the actual overall single player games?
See, I this is going to be one of those rare ones where as far as like the story goes of them, I really liked the stories in all of them. Like everything just felt very true to life. Like I was just really in part of it. So while it was told as a story, and like you said, the cinematics are just so incredible, and it just ties in so well with the gameplay. And how old was Battlefield 1? It's what,
2016?
Yeah, because I asked Aaron earlier this week. I was like, "Has this game been remastered?" And because it hasn't, it's a beautiful game, and so, and both of them rival in that. So I just love the way that the stories were told, and so I want to go back and finish the ones in Battlefield 5 that I haven't finished.
Yeah, as far as it goes, when it comes to the single player on these two in particular, you got to figure when you're making a game like this, you can go the route that every Call of Duty has gone, pretty much every first-person war shooter has gone, which is follow a main character, end of the world coming.
They're one-man army.
Yeah, it's kind of like a one-man army thing. So they could have just phoned it in and went down that route and just did that. But I think it was really clever and smart to do them as just little brief snippets from different parts of the war, with different characters, different mechanics, all of that stuff involved. I think that was a clever way of doing things. The only time it's kind of a bummer is every once in a while you run into a story that you really like, and you really kind of like these characters, and you kind of wish you had a little bit more time with them.
Yeah.
And since they're built to be so short, some of the stories can come off feeling kind of just not quite like they connected just right.
Yeah.
Like they want you to get an emotional grab out of a situation, but it's like, well, I only knew these characters for like 15 minutes. So, that type of emotional grab isn't really going to be there. But again, it's different. There really isn't anything out there that I can think of where it's almost like an anthology of war events. I can't think of anything else that exists like that. So for that sake, I do think these are great, but ultimately they don't stick with you all that long.
Yeah, there was a couple like throughout the two of them. Yeah, I agree. Like I'm starting to like some of these characters, and it just kind of ends. But there was a couple that like I liked, but some of the mechanics I thought were okay. Like in 5, I didn't care too much for Nordley, which was like a skiing one. It was cool. It kind of did like an open world kind of thing where you had to go to different points, but you can go to them anytime you want. But that was one where it felt like a one-man army kind of thing, and it just didn't feel as realistic and didn't feel too emotional and connecting. So I was kind of like, eh. But like with Battlefield 1 I thought had the most interesting.
I'd agree.
Like as soon as you start, you kind of jump through these characters going through this big battle, and like they're kind of getting picked off one by one, and then like the music is just nailing it, and like the emotion just really quick. And then you have one where you're following like a tank crew. I think the best ones are in 1.
I agree.
But like I said, if you haven't played, the Battlefield 5 just had The Last Tank. That one I think is the best because it was cool that they actually have a single player game like map where you're actually playing as the Germans. Because anytime you play World War II, you're always killing Germans, and this time you're playing Germans actually fighting the Americans and killing Americans. and it was cool because it actually, like any World War II game, it's always just mindless AI German guy you shoot, but this time it's actually like showed the real human side of the Germans, and it's really impressive.
Wow, Andrew, I didn't realize you were a Nazi.
Yeah,
that's cool. You were so excited to talk about that.
It's got real dangerous real quick.
I mean, fun fact, did you know the Call of Duty zombie mode? It originally was supposed to be a mini game where you like wake up and you're getting on a gun and you're shooting people, and then it's supposed to be revealed to you that you're German on Normandy Beach shooting American troops.
Well, that would have been
real bummer.
Yeah, that was the original pitch. But then, like, and they actually, like, for the most part, created it. But then they ended up scrapping it, and then, they said they did zombies. I remember hearing that story, and I was like, man.
Probably a good call. I'm going to be honest with you. Probably a good call.
Yeah, I mean, unless you had context and actually, like, made it more human size. If it's just a mini game of you shooting Americans, like, you got to have context.
Yeah.
So it's probably a good call. They went with zombies, because now that's, like, one of their biggest selling things in Call of Duty.
What I liked about the war stories, though, was like the different biomes of them, essentially. Like, in particular, like the Lawrence of Arabia one and Battlefield 1, I thought was really cool because, I mean, like, I don't know, I just kind of forget that, oh yeah, like when we say this was a world war, it wasn't just like Germany and France and everyone else kind of jumped in. Like, this war was all over the world. So it just, I don't know, it was like a really cool way of telling that. And I don't know, it was almost like a history lesson at the same time.
Wow. So you had fun killing and learning.
You can't say that every day in a video game, you know?
Really can't. You really can't.
Today I killed some things and I learned some things.
But next thing I want to talk about the big part of this, and that is the multiplayer. So as I said, for me, I thought Battlefield 5's multiplayer is a lot better. So Aaron, you've been playing a lot of Battlefield 1, and I've been jumping back in with you, and I think Battlefield 1 is really good still. But for me, I loved 5. In 1, the biggest thing I hated in 1, in multiplayer, they have these things called behemoths that every once will appear in the map. Whatever team's losing, it tries to balance out the map that you're on and give them a behemoth, whether it's like a war train or a giant blimp. But honestly, the behemoths were just kind of dumb. But I thought the graphics are better in Battlefield 1. But in 5 just, I love the maps in 5.
Yeah, I mean, all right, so first off, there is no such thing as an ugly-looking Battlefield game.
Yeah.
They are always really good-looking, even if you go back and play something like Battlefield 4 and 3. They both still look good and still hold up today. But Battlefield 1, to me, graphically, I don't think there's a first-person shooter that I think looks better than that. But here's my critical differences. The health and ammo mechanic in Battlefield 5 is atrocious.
Oh, see, I think it's so much better.
Here's why it sucks. If you are anybody but a medic, you can only really heal if you get a health pack. If you're a medic, you have unlimited health packs. If you are anybody else, you are totally dependent on one of two things happening. Somebody throwing you a medic pack, which, forget that, that's not going to happen. Or you find a spot on the map to pick up health. That sucks.
Like,
that's
I like
a
the pickup
sucky mechanic.
No, I like that you can actually build a health station or an ammo station, pick up ammo, because nobody throws you stuff.
Hold up. You can't do that just anywhere. There's like 3 locations on the map where you can build a health.
No, that's an exaggeration.
Okay, it's an exaggeration.
Every major point at least has one.
On at least Battlefield 1, you can have somebody heal, which will help heal you faster, but you will auto heal. So to me, that mechanic drives me crazy because when I'm playing, if I'm getting just hit a few times, I'm like, okay, well now I got less health going into this next fight. I already used my health pack. Now I got to depend on somebody or go find something out here. I think what they should have done, to me, what would have made the difference, when you kill somebody, they always drop ammo. I think it should have been like a 50-50. When you
They do drop ammo, and that's why if you're
they
playing,
don't drop health.
No,
That's the problem. They should maybe do a 50-50, because if the idea isn't to encourage you to push forward and not camp, you need to be throwing health out there as well. To me, it always ruins the fun factor of Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5 isn't a bad game. It's World War II. There's plenty of guns, plenty of tanks. There's tons of stuff to play with. The behemoths in Battlefield 1, although not my favorite, they're not like game-breaking for me. Not having health all game long is game breaking for me. It's the one thing that takes me out of Battlefield 5 every time.
So just play a medic every time.
Well,
That's what I did.
You totally could, and that's fine. But almost all of their guns are SMGs or shotguns. So
they do have a couple bolt. They have at least one bolt action.
In Battlefield has a lot of maps that are big, wide open battlefields. There are obviously maps that are tighter, and that class fits pretty good with it. But in those bigger maps, I'm now stuck running around with a gun that's not really effective in all these fights just because I'm going to need some health every once in a while. It's just, to me, that mechanic is so bad for these types of games. And it's one of the things that I think really separates Battlefield 1 from Battlefield 5.
No, I guess that makes sense. I mean, like I said, yeah, I just played a medic. But here's the thing. So here's where both of them, at least I'm talking on a complete and personal level, I am so bad at Battlefield multiplayer games. And generally, they just infuriate me.
This is not shocking to anybody.
No. I mean, I'm not good at first-person shooters, period. I mean, that's just partially a fact to begin with. But like Aaron was saying, is because the maps are so spread out and so wide open, there's a lot of sniping. And I don't see snipers, but they see me. So I'm
never miss
just
you.
generally cannon fodder.
You don't see like a bright glint from their sniper scopes?
Oh, I mean, I see it after they shoot at me the first time, usually.
Perfect time.
You know, and then I try to find them with my SMG because I'm playing as a medic,
Yep.
and then they found my head region, and I found my dead region.
And so this is why 5's your favorite, because you get to build things.
Yes.
Exactly. I can just hang back at the points, get capture points. And from a leaderboard perspective or a scoreboard, or it just does a scoreboard. So where you get points for capturing, for building. So I always feel like I'm right in the middle of the pack because I'm not out there trying to get killed, so I don't die a lot. And I get rewarded for it. People think I'm effective.
The fortification system in Battlefield 5 was a very smart move.
Yeah, it's actually fun. And like cool how you can kind of rebuild the map that's so destructible.
Yeah, it'll give you a lot of score for just building up fortifications to kind of protect your team. Now, those fortifications, do they do a whole lot?
Yeah.
Not really. But it's
unless you build SMGs and stuff like that, or the LMGs. And...
Yeah. It's still a clever way of kind of evolving those systems. So, I don't mind that.
So this
and I felt like it made the gameplay more of like a team effort. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know, you just had everyone who had a little bit more of a trait that you needed to have on your squad, which is one thing that I think is really cool about the gameplay in both Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 is the squad aspect of it, is that you have, what is it, usually like 16 players per side, but it's built out into 4 squads of 4 on each side, and you can fill them out or fill it with your friends. And yeah, like each one kind of takes on a different objective to take on this giant immersive map.
See, and this is why Battlefield 5 like I prefer it over 1, because this is another mechanic that they put in 5 that I love. Even if you're not a medic role, which if you're a medic in 1, only they can revive. But in Battlefield 5, no matter what class you are, you can at least revive your squad mates. So it really encourages you to be near your squad and to help your squad out. Your revive time is slower, like it takes longer to pick them back up, but I at least love that they give you that option, because it's not like, oh, we have a squad, someone has to be the medic, or we're all just dead. So I love that, and I love that you can just instantly spawn in your squad mates. So I love the squad aspect to it. And if anyone here is like afraid of playing a multiplayer game for like toxic environments or anything like that, you absolutely will not get it with Battlefield. That's another thing that I generally love about Battlefield multiplayer over Call of Duty. The maps are huge. There's tons of players. You could be like Keith and really bad, but you're at least helping the team. He's building fortifications. He's supplying people. He's doing things that he can do. Maybe every once in a while get in a tank or something and try to help people that way. And like, you can do that. Like, you don't feel like, oh man, I just, I didn't do enough kills. I didn't do enough this. Like, you can still feel like you're participating.
Yeah, I think it helps for anybody that doesn't know the Battlefield franchise. One of the unique features of it, what separates it from Call of Duty, is the big battle moments. It's a 32 versus 32. That's kind of its bread and butter. So I think that's what kind of helps in that aspect. When you're one person on a team of 32, it's not like everything is dependent on you and you're the sole reason a team is losing. It really is kind of a group effort. I think that kind of avoids the toxicity. We're in Call of Duty where it's like either 5v5 or 6v6, you can totally bring your team down if you're not performing, because that shows way more. So
Keith nods.
you can really kind of hang out in the background on these battles and still have a pretty decent time and not be awful. I did want to add one more thing that I think makes Battlefield 1 better than Battlefield 5. There is one game mode that is way better in Battlefield 1 called Grand Operations.
Yeah.
It's not that good in Battlefield 5. In Grand Operations, it will kind of take multiple maps and turn them into one giant battle. So, like, you'll be forcing onto somebody's front, you'll be moving through a map, you'll win, and then you move on to the next map. So it kind of takes 3 maps and moves them into one giant fight. Battlefield 1 does a way better job than they do in Battlefield 5. I don't know why they reversed that. It was a beloved game mode. I love it.
I mean, they still have it.
They still have it. It's just not as good.
Yeah.
The whole it would take on this larger theme, where in Battlefield 5 it was just like, all right, you're just gonna play this map.
In which they're meant to be like realistic battles that happen,
Yeah.
so it kind of gives you like a lesson on it too.
Yeah, again, the learning aspect of it. You learn as you're playing. It's wonderful.
You learn as little kids are teabagging your dead corpse.
Yeah.
You say it like you don't do it too.
No, I'm a mature adult. I mean, I thought they did fine in 5 because there's a couple maps where you're doing like the Norwegian, where like the allies are actually dropping.
It's the only map that does that. It is cool.
Yeah, that's true.
It is super cool. I agree. And you know what I noticed is when they showed this game off, they showed that grand operation where you're flying into Norway and you're picking when to jump out of the plane, and then you're doing your assault. And it's the only one that does anything like that. Some of the Pacific maps in Battlefield 5, you're on boats coming in, but that's it. You're driving the boats.
You see, and this is why Battlefield 5 is my favorite, because it's just that. The Pacific maps.
The Pacific maps are amazing.
So Battlefield 5 was meant to be something longer. I think now they're kind of calling it quits on it now that since they announced new Battlefield.
Called quits on it 2 summers ago.
But yeah, it was supposed to go through multiple stages of World War II. And so, like, the game didn't launch with the Americans and the Japanese, but now they're there. And the Pacific maps are so good. If anyone who is an old school gamer like me, and you've played Battlefield 1942, that's one of their original ones that was actually pretty big and impressive. They actually brought some of the maps back from that game into this, and they're free. And that's what I love, is that the maps are just free. If you have Game Pass, the Battlefield 1 maps are now free, but you had to pay for map packs on that one. But they're all free now, and you have all the campaigns and all that stuff. But I think the Battlefield 5 maps are so much more interesting. I love the more destructibility, the town fights. Most of Battlefield 1s are kind of like muddy farmlands, no man lands, and like for me,
Battlefield 1 or World War 1 was mostly fought in
I
trenches.
know, and I understand that. I understand that's how the war
it's historically
was.
accurate.
I understand.
You're learning lessons,
that.
Andrew.
Come on.
I understand that, in which, once again, not faulting that game, but I don't care for the weapons in Battlefield 1. Once again, I know it's part of the era, but I'd like to customize my guns and stuff, and there's like no customization.
Kind of. They're in loot boxes.
Yeah, that's what I don't. Well, the skins.
The skins.
And I hate the loot box system in 1.
I mean, it was kind of. It's not one of the last games to do loot boxes, but it was when it was kind of coming to an end, because there's no loot boxes in Battlefield 5.
Yeah,
if that's a big deal to anybody. But obviously the guns in World War I versus World War II were pretty
quite
different. I love you can go on servers on Battlefield 1 where you can only use historically accurate weapons. So typically a soldier, in Germany would have just a Gewehr rifle. So that's the only gun you can use. So on the German side, they've got that, and then maybe the Allies would have a different gun, but they're just pretty much single shot rifles. I love it. So there's no automatic weapons. Your sniper is just your rifle, and everybody's got one.
So that's pretty cool. I do
love
that.
those modes. It's very, very fun because it opens up the game into a totally different territory. It feels really cool.
A mode like that sounds like something that I'd be like, oh, I might have a chance to be good at that. And then I'd play it for about 5 minutes and all of those words would disappear into much different words.
I'm telling you, though, most people can't shoot. So what ends up happening is it's two sides just kind of shooting and missing constantly. So you'd be surprised. Like, yeah, I'll connect on 1 of 10 shots. And
they're normally
'cause
not
I
a
can't
one-hit
snipe.
kill.
I can't snipe. I'm bad at sniping. I can play with a lot of things, but I cannot do these single bolt action guns. So I think you'd be surprised, and it's a good way to get better at it because you know that you're always going to go up against somebody else that's struggling with it too, instead of you going up against somebody with a fully automatic weapon. So it does help.
I suppose there's some truth to there.
No.
Still learning.
Now, Aaron, I'm also surprised you like 1 over 5 because for you, I know you're the kind of person with all the Call of Duty that you play, you love short time to kills. And Battlefield 5 has a much shorter time to kill than 1.
The time to kill in Battlefield 5 is better. And that's not to say that there aren't good things about Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5 is still a very good game. I'm just saying if you take the package as a whole, I'm going to find more enjoyment out of playing Battlefield 1 than I will out of Battlefield 5. Another interesting staple in Battlefield games, when you're using a weapon, you get service stars on it every 100 kills you get with it.
Yeah.
And you can see that, how many service stars you have. And it's kind of like a weird way of showing you use a gun a lot. When you kill somebody, they see what your service stars on it. It's a weird kind of addictive way of trying to build up your kind of notoriety on a weapon. None of that exists in Battlefield 5. None. Like, they don't have
I
any
never noticed
system
that.
like that. They just removed it. And that's
I actually never noticed that.
beloved Battlefield mechanic.
Yeah, I remember Battlefield 4, my MP7, I had like 4 battle stars on.
It's cool.
I loved it.
And so, like, when you're playing Battlefield, it's Battlefield 1, it was something you worked for. You did it on all the battlefields. I have no clue why that was a mechanic. They just said, nah, gone. It was a fun thing to have there. It's just a cool little treat to have that, and it's gone.
They just forgot. It was just a little whoopsie.
That's just my problems with Battlefield 5. It made weird decisions to feel different, but I don't think they were progressive decisions. They were just they were negative.
All right, and there's one thing I wanted to bring up too that always irritates me. Every Battlefield, I'm sure 2048 or 2042 is going to be exactly the same. Anytime a Battlefield game comes out, it is broken. And even then, it takes them forever to fix. Every Battlefield game, like me, Aaron, and Keith, we've normally got Battlefield almost like within the first month usually, and we all play together, even though Keith hates it, and he always ends up reluctantly getting it to play with us. But anytime you try to join as a squad, it almost never works. The squad feature almost never works. And then trying to load in together, it almost never works. And like to do your assignments, you have to completely exit the game. Like there's so many weird quality of life things that whatever reason EA cannot figure out how to fix. I will say at least both of them now are in pretty good spots, but there are still so many issues, especially with, I mean, I don't know if one doesn't have assignments, right? I can't remember.
No. Battlefield 5 does. Another stupid system.
Battlefield 5 has these assignments that you pick, which are basically like quests you pick. They're kind of like dailies, but you get to pick which ones you're doing. And if you ever complete one, you have to completely exit your game, which takes a very long time. Even if you have a Series X, it still takes a while to just load out of these games. So you got to go completely to the main menu, assign yourself a new mission, and then jump back into a game. It's really weird. Everyone's been complaining about it literally since the game's been launched, and they said they were going to fix it, and they still haven't fixed it. It's weird.
And they're not going to fix it.
They're not going to.
At this point, no.
Well, they stopped working on that game, like I said, I think either a year and a half or 2 years ago, because I believe EA has 5 studios working on Battlefield 2042. So they have a ton of studios working on this game. So that's why they just stopped working on 5, because eventually they were all moving over to the new one. So hopefully all of that extra work means it'll come out working. But I understand. That's wishful thinking and not likely, because they don't have a track record for it. You're right. They always take a while to be good.
A big issue is their servers. EA, for whatever reason, just does not upgrade their servers or something.
Yeah.
Just they're doing their best, okay?
Well,
it's just
you guys were obviously big-time Apex players. I can't recall. Did Apex owned or published by EA? Did they have server issues at the beginning?
EA's published by EA, but it's done by Respawn. And no,
They not always have server issues, but they regularly have server issues, though. There'll be times where like a patch comes out and just randomly creates some new bug that just kicks you out when you're trying to launch. You just have to keep trying until it lets you log in.
That's the only time. Anytime there's a patch, and it only lasts normally about a day or two. I wouldn't say consistently have server issues.
I could dig up, I'm sure, 5+ at least within the last year if I were to bet. But again, it's not to say that it's game breaking because, like you said, they fix it quickly, and usually it's not effective for every game. It just happens enough that it's noticeable, and that's all I'm saying. They're not the best.
Anything more in the multiplayer? I don't know if you guys want to talk about vehicles or just.
I mean, vehicles are great. Flying planes is awesome if you can get into one.
And it's so hard. It's so freaking hard to fly a plane.
It is like it's really frustrating to watch somebody be really good in a plane. Like
someone who's good in a plane literally can own the room.
Absolutely dominate a map.
They stop all the ground troops. They stop all the vehicles. And anytime you try to get in a plane yourself to try to stop them, they just take you out. People who are godly at planes in Battlefield 5 literally run the game.
I was playing Battlefield 5 maybe 2 nights ago. It was a Pacific map, and somebody was on the Japanese side, and they had a 0. He bombed me probably 5 times in a row. And I swear, I'm like, is he just picking on me? I don't know what I'm doing out here that's bothering this guy so much. But we couldn't take him out of the sky. He was just dominating. And the zeros are really good in Battlefield 5. Again, another mechanic that I hate about Battlefield 5. All vehicles can run out of ammo. So you have to constantly get them refilled.
I hate and like it because I hate people that literally stand on a hill and just snipe with a vehicle.
I understand what they were trying to do. I think it's really bad in planes because usually you can bomb once and then you got to fly far away.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Get reloaded, come all the way back, and if you miss, it's like, well, all right.
Yeah, it's not fun.
I'll be back in 5 minutes, guys.
It's just not fun, and that's the problem. And even a tank, like if you're pushing in with a tank and you run out, it's like, well, now I gotta go find ammo, and there's a couple places you can go and get it reloaded. I understand why they were doing it. I don't think it necessarily works itself out the way that they probably intended it to.
So I think that's a big thing. If you're a person who does not like to deal with vehicles or any of that stuff, you'll probably like Battlefield 1. There are vehicles in Battlefield 1, but they're not as dominating. They're not as devastating, yeah. The planes aren't as devastating.
A little bit more clunkier.
Yeah, because they're kind of like paper prop planes, so they're not as durable. Yeah, so if you're someone who really more just wants to kind of like just be on the ground shooting, that's great. But my favorite maps, I normally like boots on the ground, no vehicles, just fighting. My favorite maps, which they brought it back, it was in Battlefield 4, which was Metro. They brought it back in Battlefield 5, and it's this train station map, and it's just normally like these 3 main tunnels, and it's just grenades and bullets and just bodies. It is a blast. I love choke point maps. The big open maps, yes, unlike you, Keith, I get sniped by someone, and I'm just like, all right, this is annoying. I don't like this. But when everyone's crammed in a tunnel just hucking grenades at each other, love it.
Yeah, it's the old meat grinder ones, and there's always a couple of those types of maps. It's why I like the frontline modes the most. The frontline modes are the best. It takes the giant map, and then there's 2 control points. One side defends, one side attacks. The attackers have limited lives. If they capture that point, it pushes you back further, until one team wins or loses. So it's like this tug-of-war feel to it. But it concentrates the fight.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sure that the fight is taking place at these 2 points and not anywhere on this massive map. So it kind of helps to keep things focused.
Yeah.
So I agree. I like those types of modes that are a lot more of a grind.
And so I will say, like, Andrew, you were talking about the Pacific maps. Maybe it happens in more of them and I just never really noticed, but I felt like the Pacific maps in particular had, like, scenarios built into them where, what was it, like, one of them, the Americans start with all the bases and the Japanese have to push through, and, like, but they start with more lives, I think, and so they just have, like, these different scenarios built into them that I thought were a lot more interesting, at least. One of them we were playing, it felt like the other team had about 15 tanks, and we got one twice, I think.
Yeah. And yeah, that
So
was
that
the map
was fun.
that people in the planes were literally just taking us out as soon as we spawned. It's like, we got a tank, and it's like, blam. It's like, okay, never mind. But the next thing I want to talk about, I guess, is comparing actually the graphics of the two. So, yeah, as my brother said earlier, there is no such thing as a bad-looking Battlefield. But comparatively, though, did you guys think any of them were particularly better?
I'm a Battlefield 1 guy in graphics as well. I think some of the maps are absolutely stunning. Monte Grappa is, beautiful hillside. Looks amazing. Some of those like trench levels, even though it's a lot of black and brown and
Yeah,
char,
the color palette's not great.
it still has a very beautiful, scenic look to it. And if I remember correctly, Battlefield 1 was one of the first games I can recall where if like you fall down into the mud and you get up, it's on your gun.
Yeah.
Like you would see yourself getting muddy and kind of gross as the game goes
And
on.
blood if you
Yeah.
get shot, yeah.
They added that into Battlefield 5 as well, but I feel like that was the first one that I ever saw it.
Yeah, I don't think it's as good in Battlefield 5.
I don't think it is either. It looks so much better in Battlefield 1. I don't know what it is. There's this weird crispness to that first game where I think visually, even how the players run, they look different than they do in Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5, they have a little bit more of a hokier, kind of clunky look.
Yeah.
Where in Battlefield 1, it's way more fluid. I just think in general, Battlefield 1 looks a lot better.
Yeah, see, I do think the motion, it almost feels like, it doesn't feel like you're looking through the eyes of the player. It feels like you're strapped as a
GoPro.
Yeah, like a GoPro at the top of the player's head. And it's just like this weird bouncy motion that doesn't feel quite right. But one thing about the cinematics, at least so talking about the storyline, but still the graphics, is everything was almost perfect in both of them, except for close-ups of people's faces.
Yeah.
Like from afar, looked great. They walked great. They animated great. But the faces had this weird shiny glow to them. And were just like over realistic and creepy. I did not care for them.
See, I actually agree with you this one, Aaron. I think Battlefield 1's graphics are actually better. Because like Battlefield 1's definitely a war that like games generally don't cover, or honestly like there's not a lot of stories about it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people forget how devastating it was. Like there's still some places in Europe that you cannot walk. Like the land literally is poisoned from the amount of shells that have been laid onto it, and some of the shells are still active. So like there's still like just some uninhabited areas of Europe that you cannot go to. Like that's how devastating it was. But like a lot of people just don't realize this. Like there's still, damaged tanks out there that can't get recovered. And so yeah, the color palette in 1 isn't great. It is a lot of browns. You do get some pretty gorgeous landscapes in some of them. But yeah, the crawling in the mud, I don't think it's as good in 5, because in 5 you're doing a lot of street fighting. Like there's some areas you're rolling around dirt, but not as much. In the first one, it's all just mud and water and just dirt, and it just really shows. And yeah, the game came out in 2016, and the cinematics in both of them are gorgeous. I love the cinematics, and the graphics really just showed in the single player, and I loved it.
Well, Keith, you mentioned just the other day, I think when we were texting, you mentioned the tank level and the cinematic with the tank driving overhead, I think in Battlefield 1, right?
Oh yeah, it's like one of the very opening scenes of like when you start to like actually roll out the first time for the tank, you go over like a trench of like your own people, and they're just not expecting it. It's just this epic, like, I don't know, watching the treads just tear over this giant trench, and you're like, holy crap, those tanks were massive, because those trenches were like 15 feet wide or whatever, and it just plows right over it. And it felt like you were actually standing underneath it as it went over your head.
Yeah, some of those cinematics are really stunning. And it's weird for me to think, like, even playing Battlefield 1 today, because it had been a while since I had played it, so I kind of picked it back up recently. And I'm looking at some of those graphics, and I'm trying to think, can I think of even a game that's come out today, at least as a first-person shooter, that has looked this good? And I honestly can't think of one. Like, none of the Call of Duties are hitting that type of fidelity.
Yeah.
Like, they're not quite there. And you know, there's some obviously good-looking Call of Duty games, but I still think the attention to detail on that game is unmatched. Even to the point where I think Battlefield 5 it's still not hitting that level that it did in 2016.
Yeah, it definitely seemed a little bit like a step back with the graphics. Like, it's definitely not bad, because the other thing that you really notice that is really great, both these games have really good weather effects.
Oh yeah.
Like in Battlefield 1, like there's some levels that like the fog rolls in, and it's crazy because you don't see anything, and like it only like 10 feet in front of you, and you just see kind of people busting through the mist. Really, really cool weather effects. And yeah, in Battlefield 5 in the Pacific maps when the rain's hitting, awesome weather effects. Honestly, even the water looks good.
Yeah.
Still not Sea of Thieves, but the water looks really good.
Yeah, still no Sea of Thieves, but yes, very good water.
But of course, the thing that they also definitely land is the sound effects.
Oh yeah.
It actually, I remember, granted it was earlier Battlefields, but every time I play them, I legitimately feel like this is kind of like what a war would feel like. It's just constant bullets whizzing, explosions, like the just dirt flying everywhere, vehicles rolling through. They nail the sound effects, and it's crazy.
It is a headphone game.
Yes,
in my opinion,
especially if you're playing single player.
Yes, yeah, you want to hear all of that. They obviously spend an incredible amount of time, you know, working on the sounds of the guns, and I agree. It feels like World War I and World War II. Well, what I imagine it would sound like. I wasn't there, but if I were guessing, it would probably sound very similar to this.
Yeah, especially if the tank levels in like on the single players on like on 1 and 5. If you put headphones on, because there's a couple moments when you're in the tank and like the tank shooting and then like them screaming at each other, really, really cool.
Oh yeah, like the sound of them like reloading the tank every time, and just I think like Aaron mentioned is the attention to detail with the guns, but it's not even just the individual battles, it's the outer effects of the game. It's what you're hearing off in the distance that has no bearing on you, and it's the explosions, it's the whistle of, you know, a bomb coming down. It feels immersive, and it feels like you're like playing a movie sometimes. So it's just really cool. And yeah, it's 110% a headphone game. Like there's just no other way I'd rather play it.
Another thing I kind of wanted to bring up, because I didn't know where to exactly put this, but I will say another thing I don't care for Battlefield 5 for, it definitely stepped back on the realism. Battlefield 1 was a lot more like, this is how World War I was and stuff like that. I remember when the first trailer came out for Battlefield 5, there was like, everyone was making fun of it, of like, people with like prosthetic limbs fighting and
you're
stuff
saying
like
that Battlefield 5 stepped back in the realism.
Yeah. I thought Battlefield 5 stepped back from the realism.
No. Well, Battlefield 5 has a very famous negative reaction to the announcement of that game. Yeah, there was a lot of females in the trailer, and there was a lot of prosthetic arms in it. That was like, what is happening right now? They fortunately really toned that stuff back. Yeah,
which like I don't blame them. Like they obviously want inclusion and stuff, and it's like I'm fine with that.
Can you even pick that girl character?
She had like a claw arm. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think you could even play
I actually didn't think about that.
Like she was like a main look of that game, and then I think they just scrubbed it.
Yeah, EA did kind of come out with some of like the prosthetic stuff, and they actually did explain like, no, some of these people were real war heroes, and they actually did kind of give the story of some of these people were like, this is weird, like this guy didn't exist, and they're like, no, here's pictures of him. This was a real guy.
One of those guys is, you'll see, you can unlock him. He's got face paint on, like he's got this weird circle face paint, and everyone's like, who is this guy? He's got a mohawk.
Yeah,
like, this guy was not in World War II. Sure enough, there are absolutely pictures of this guy. I think he was an American. Like he has a name and all this stuff. They have him in this game, but that's fine. They're picking out these random situations and making it seem like it was really common.
Yeah,
it really wasn't. Yeah, but they did exist. Sure.
I mean, it makes cool cosmetics for you to unlock.
It does make cool cosmetics.
I mean, you got your rat burner mask, which literally was a guy with a sheet of metal in front of his face.
I love my
like
rat
no
burners.
eye slit. and you love that
There
mask.
is an ice lid.
Oh man, they're
Rat burners, man.
It's literally a sheet of metal.
even that helmet. No, see, like I think those types of stories are the cool ones that I think are best kept for the war stories, where they kept them small and everything, and like here's an untold story of the war that not many people know about, but it's actually kind of cool, and here's why. So I liked if they did them there, but yeah.
So with all this said and done, obviously E3 just happened and they announced Battlefield 2042. How do you guys feel about it? Are you guys pumped for it? Are there things you are looking forward to, things you're not looking forward to?
I mean, I'm probably gonna end up buying it and playing it with you guys.
That's shocking to me.
It's what I end up doing. I don't know. We'll see.
What a glowing
Because
endorsement.
well, see, I just struggle with Battlefield
Sure.
games, and that's what I've said all
Then
along.
why buy it?
I don't know.
It's
It looks
multiplayer
like it might be fun. See, that might. Well, no, but I mean, it's a little late for this. But the funny thing about that is all I had ever played of Battlefield was the multiplayer. So this was my first time playing the war stories, and I was like, man, I missed out on an awesome aspect of these games. But yeah, so I guess in that aspect, I kind of always took Battlefield as just multiplayer games to begin with. So that's how I would take this one. I guess my biggest hesitancy is I guess I just don't know that I always like the modern warfare stuff. There's too much like crazy wall riding and doing crazy things that I'm not going to be good at. Like, people are going to be flying around on me.
There is flying, yes.
And I'm just going to be angry.
So you're going to buy it reluctantly, and you will
Maybe.
begrudgingly play it and hate it.
I mean, if it's on Game Pass, I will definitely end up playing it.
I think it.
We'll see about buying it.
It's not gonna come day one Game Pass, but
No, I would be
imagine
surprised
it
for that.
will, after it kind of gets its run. But
Although, who knows? Under the window of EA Play, maybe they'll do like a 7-day trial on it or something at the beginning.
yeah,
Possible. So what about you?
obviously, yes, I'm ecstatic for it. I'm ecstatic for it for a bunch of reasons. It's now been a few games before they've out of like kind of the modern warfare feel. I will never say like I have a preference of warfare that I like. I like World War II games. I like modern warfare games.
War's rough, man.
War's rough. War is brutal. But I love the fact that these, if you've got a Series X, it's going to be, for the first time ever, 64 versus 64 instead of 32 versus 32. So that's massive. Graphically, this looks like it's going to be hitting some points that I'm going to love. It's making some controversial changes again. Each class can use any gun that they want. That's a big deal, something they've never done before. They're introducing what's basically almost like heroes.
Yeah, it's kind of like a hero shooter a little bit.
Yeah, so like if you are, and this is a real character's name, Sundance, he has a wingsuit. So he can jump off of a building and use a wingsuit to get around. Or you can be some guy, I don't know, his name's like Maverick or something like that. He's got a grappling gun. And you can now grapple up onto things. So that is going to be a controversial change. I won't care. I'll like it either way. I would think most people nowadays, when you're going and playing these types of games, you're used to playing hero shooters.
Yeah.
Because that's everything now. That's Overwatch. That's Apex. That's all hero shooter stuff. So, yeah, I'm 100% excited. I'm gonna get it day one, and I'm gonna play the crap out of it.
Yeah, overall, I'm really excited too. I was a huge fan of Battlefield 4 and the Battlefield Bad Companies. Like, I do like Modern Warfare games. Because also, too, normally these ones have had really big destructibility. I remember Battlefield 4, they had a thing called Levolution where, like, you could blow up a thing and it literally alters, like, the entire map. And it kind of looks like they're bringing that back. They're adding, like, these cool weather effects of, like, a tornado ripping through or sandstorms. So I think they're really upping the destructibility again, which that's always my favorite. I love being in a building and literally, like, seeing the walls getting torn as someone's trying to shoot at me. I love, the different traversal things. I love the vehicles. I love the tools I have. Like, that kid who's destroying me in a jet. Well, this time I finally have an anti-air missile launcher. I can keep spamming at him and eventually knock him out of the air. So I love just kind of the tools I can get in Modern Warfare. For me, when this game was first announced, I will say I was slightly disappointed because as my brother said, I played Battlefield 2148 or whatever, which was like a futuristic warfare. The only reason I loved that game, there was a game mode called like Titans, and each team had a spaceship, and it had a shield, and you literally had to knock the shield down, and then you got on like an APC and did like these drop pods onto the ship, and then you had to fight in the ship to blow it up. It was a fun game mode, and I was hoping this game would bring it back, but it doesn't look like it because it's still kind of like a Modern Warfare, just slightly in the future. I'm curious how the single player will be since it's going Modern Warfare. You know, we're talking about how much we love the single player in these two games. I'm afraid they're going to go kind of Call of Duty with it and do like another one-man army. And oh wait, no, they
didn't. Yeah, Aaron already said like multiple times this is multiplayer only.
That doesn't remind me. That makes me sad.
It doesn't make me sad at all because this, to me, what Battlefield is doing is they're acknowledging the fact that it's always been about multiplayer, and for the most part, Call of Duty's been doing the same thing where they've scaled back in some of their games if it has a single player. And then recently they had one that didn't have single player at all. So,
which a lot of people got mad about.
So long as this game has a lot of maps and a lot of content, that's all I care about. That's all I want to do anyway.
So you're okay $60?
100%. Because I'll play it enough to justify my $60. I'll play enough within that first month to justify that $60. So, yeah, I absolutely have no issues with that.
See, it kind of makes me sad. I love those vignettes.
And it was a good idea. It was a good idea, but it's not. I just don't think it's necessary in 2021. Like, it's a multiplayer game. That's what it is.
Yeah, and I think like Andrew, what you were starting to even say is, I don't know, they'd just be making up stories that haven't been told, and then it just feels a little boring. Where at least they could pull from some actual history on World War I and World War II. They could make them feel real and make them mean something, but I think it would just come up as like a throwaway in today's day and age.
We played how many hours of Overwatch, which never had a single player, and we would have gladly paid $60 for that game. We would have gladly paid $100 for that game if we knew how much we were going to love it and play it.
Yeah, that's true.
So I just don't think it's necessary. And I think for some people, single player experiences are what they want, and there are a ton of first-person shooter single-player games. Like, you can go find them. Battlefield is known for massive battles. It's the only in Battlefield moments. This just, to me, made sense, and this was a long time coming. Those vignettes seemed like a sign of, okay, they don't really want to invest a ton of time into this. Just, it's clever. It's a good way of doing it, but it's not investing a large story.
I'd slightly disagree because some of the Battlefield games stories were good. When they did Battlefield Bad Company,
okay,
that was like a fun story, and I actually
Bad
really
Company
liked it.
is an exception. Bad Company is an exception. Bad Company, it was all about characters.
Yeah.
It was like they were like goofy kind of, weren't they?
A little less serious.
It was basically 4 guys going AWOL trying to steal gold.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, it is an exception, but it's still, it was still good.
Yeah, I won't disagree.
So I do agree, and I wouldn't feel bad spending $60. I'm not like that because I agree with you. I definitely am going to spend a lot of time on this game.
100%.
I'll see how much fun you guys are having. One quick question: did we I know we talked about the sound? Did we really talk about music? I mean,
the music.
We probably all agree.
100%.
I was gonna say, I think we all pretty much agree that it's.
Go check out these soundtracks if you have not heard them. Especially again, Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1 had a lot of large choirs.
Yeah.
So they would have these big orchestras and then like these choirs singing behind them, and they are absolutely stunning. They've got
it just pulls in so much more emotion to the game. Like, it doesn't do like the classic war thing of like, here, let's just throw in some rock and roll music, go kill some Germans. It's so much more impactful, and it makes the game that much better.
The music is so good. Yeah. Every once in a while, I'll be in a menu on Battlefield 1, and I'll be blown away at how good that music is.
Oh yeah, brings a tear to your eye every time.
It kind of does. I get emotional. I choke up.
But as far as achievements go, I do not recommend this game for achievement hunters, but it's also not awful. You get a lot of achievements from the vignettes, but the vignettes have a lot of collectibles, just going around collecting like intel or dog tags or just various stuff. And it's fine. You can get quite a bit of gamer score from it. But there is a decent amount of like multiplayer ones as well. But yeah, it's definitely not a achievement hunter game, so definitely don't play this game for achievements. But getting to our final thoughts, Keith, why don't you start? Why don't you? I guess it's kind of hard to give a score.
I'm really in a weird place when it comes to Battlefield games because there's nothing bad to say about them. I know we talked like about day one, they are kind of broken. It takes them a while to get things up and running, but there's just nothing bad about them. Top to bottom, they create a quality product. I am just so bad at it that it makes me not want to play it. So if you're like me, if you're not very good at these, but you want to play them, find some friends to play with, squad up, and then it's fun. Because at least, I don't know, you can laugh amongst each other as you're getting your heads sniped off from God knows where for the 15th time. So it's a lot of fun. And then if you're also like me and you probably skipped over the war stories originally, go back and play them. They're incredible. So while it's kind of a weird pass for me, this game is nothing less than an 85 as like a reasonable score still. So I'm going to give it that. But also go play it probably because it is really good.
Yeah, so for myself, not even for the vignettes, just for the multiplayer, these are 100% worth it. There is nothing like Battlefield currently on the market. There just isn't. Like, you can go play, you can go play Halo, you can go play Call of Duty, and those are all great, but those are not Battlefield. Battlefield, that unique 32 versus 32, there's nothing like it. The closest I can think of is maybe like Battlefront, those Star Wars games.
Yeah, which is kind of developed by the same people.
It's the closest to it, but I wouldn't even say that they really fall into the same type of category. So there's just nothing like them. If you at all care about first-person shooters at all, even if you're playing by yourself, I play by myself all the time, but I don't have a whole lot of friends that still play Battlefield games. So I play them and I love them. So I highly recommend it. Do we give scores here?
Yeah, out of 100.
If I'm giving a score for any of the last two Battlefields, I stick it in the 90s. It's like a 91.74.
Oh, nice.
I'm very analytical about it. I've broken that down.
Well, I like that we have math on this episode now. Yep. See? This episode is learning and killing.
Thank you, Battlefield.
I love you, Battlefield. But as far as my score goes, for the Battlefield games, yeah, definitely check them out. Especially now since they're in a lot better of a state. As I said kind of earlier, like they can be kind of janky when they first come out, but these are obviously a lot more stable and they look a lot better. I actually agree with Keith. I would probably give them about an 85. Yeah, playing single, I don't think I've ever really played the Battlefield games by myself. Because for me, the fun is always teaming up with my friends. Because even though you can have a squad of 4, since it is 32 versus 32, like you can have all your friends playing with you. You guys are just in different squads. And it is just a lot of fun actually communicating with your teammate, your actual friends, and going through different points, supporting each other. Love it. Really good. And the single player stories are really good. They're so much fun. Yeah, it's just for me, I'm not a huge fan of playing it by myself. So I actually agree with Keith. I give it a war-torn 85.
A what? A war-25?
War-torn.
I don't get
that. You didn't like that one? Okay, fine.
Yeah,
85.
that sucked.
But I think that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you, Aaron, so much for joining us. If you enjoyed him, he also does a podcast, which I was on an episode not too long ago. Aaron, tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, so the podcast is Real Movie Talk Podcast. So I am a co-host on that one. We just talk movies. So we've got, that can change. It can be movie news. It can be reviews. It can be a lot of trailer talk.
Sometimes just about Nicolas Cage.
Sometimes just about Nicolas Cage, which...
or Shrek Trivia.
Or Shrek Trivia. Both of those are 2 great episodes. We do plan on doing a new Nicolas Cage episode coming up pretty soon. So... because we've got more stuff to cover with Nick Cage.
There's always something with him.
There's always more to cover with Nick Cage.
Always.
That's why he's a national treasure.
So we've got new episodes every Friday. So if you do like movies at all, go ahead and check us out.
Honestly, if you don't like movies, they're pretty entertaining. I'm not a huge movie person, and I find them quite enjoyable. The Nicolas Cage episodes are really funny.
Or the Shrek episode.
Yeah, the Shrek one.
The Shrek one was also great.
I feel like you needed to... I thought it was too short, though.
I know. We needed more of the Shrek stuff. It was actually pretty good. Yeah.
But I've been your hardcore gamer host, Andrew. You can find me at Xbox Live at Firebird01952. If you want to write us an email, check us out GamePassGrabBag@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, where I'll put the scores up as well. Keith, do you have an outro for us?
I've been Keith, and I've been part of this podcast as always.
Okay.
See ya.
All right, everyone. You all have a good night. We'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye.